everybody. Thank you very much for
Hello.
tuning in, and thank you very much to my guests for coming on board. Yes, today is another show. I've actually started doing this show. Today is the first day, and I'll be coming every Sunday at 4 o'clock, where we'll be looking at the issue no one is really talking about, which is, can school cope with the rise in mental health issues? We know there'll be a rise in mental health issue with both the educators and the students. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's actually finding any ways by which educators could actually deal with it, or even how parents can deal with it. We really do need to start thinking about tools and strategies for dealing with this. Because as we know, whichever country you are in, the mental health is very important of individual, and the health sector is not equipped to really deal with what is going to be happening. And I urge parents and educators or anybody to listen to what the young people are not saying. Look at the behavior issues, because in the behavior, they're saying quite a lot. So today we'll be looking at the psychological, the isolation, the bereavement, which they've actually gone through, loss, attachment, detachment, inability to form relationship, the rejection of everything. Also looking at the physical, emotional, and social issues that would actually start manifesting in these individuals, and also in educators as a whole. I would like to welcome my guests from around the world. You know, I like around the world, right? Because I keep on getting my people from around the world, because it is so important that we start looking at things on a global basis. Because although we're in one country, we all experience the situation very, very similar, because human beings are human beings anyway. So the only thing that is different are culture in relationship to how they might deal with something slightly different from another. But we are all human beings, and we all going through this human experience of this pandemic, and it is affecting mental health of everybody everywhere. Hence the reason why I'll be coming to you with my panel from around the world. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys so very much for coming on board. So I've got the psychologist, I've got the education, the educator, I have the therapist, and I'm combined with both of them, psychology, education, whatever. Right, thank you guys. Please introduce yourself, say what country you come from, and say, your background, etc. Share as much as or as little as you want to share. Thank you. Who is going to start?
My name is Paquita. I am from Louisiana, a part of the United States, and I am a first grade teacher. I have a master's degree in reading instruction, so my focus is literacy.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tiffany.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tiffany Mapp, and I am a psychology professor and a mental health services professor at Central Texas College in Killeen. I'm coming from the United States, and I'm in Texas. I'm also a professional school counselor and been in education for about 25 years now, 18 of those years as a professional school counselor. And before that, I was a special education teacher. And yes, we just keep evolving. And I also am a student success coordinator for the School of Social Sciences at the University of Maryland, Baylor.
Thank you. Welcome, welcome.
Okay,
Yes.
my name is Margaret from Kenya. Yeah, my background is in education, a degree in education, and first master's in education administration, and the other master's in counseling psychology. I happen to be an educator, that is a high school teacher. I also do part-time lecturing in universities, and I also act as a school counselor. So I'm in both areas.
Yes, it seems to be most of us are in both areas. Thank you, and welcome everybody for coming on to the show, and welcome my Facebook people. One of the things, as I said, we're looking at is, can school cope with the mental health issue that's going to be on the increase? And I know from an educational perspective, the answer is no. Because even before we actually had the pandemic, we have students coming to us in education with a backpack. I constantly say they come with a backpack. And in that backpack, it's full. They're all the psychological issue, the emotional issue, the stress, and the fact that, they're coming from a home where in some cases, there might be not enough food for everybody to get, and all those things. So before we could actually educate the students, we have to unpack the backpack, because there is no point in we trying to educate when we're not able to, when we are not even able to go forward with that, because the backpack is so full. So as educators, and all educators would know what I'm talking about and could identify with that, because before you are able to teach, you need to start unpacking, because there's sometimes you're teaching and you realize that there's nobody home because their minds are so full. So that was even before COVID, that we had to do that before we actually educate them. And one of the sad things for me is a lot of people seem to be so concerned and drawn in with the intellectual aspect of these young people that they are forgetting the most crucial factor, that of the mental health. Because as far as I'm concerned, and I keep on saying it, I do not care a damn about the intellectual, because a child can always catch up. But once you have a broken child or a broken educator, it is so much more difficult to put back together. Because as we know, the mind is the most powerful organ or object, whatever you want to call it, in the human body. It could either make you or break you. And the minute it breaks, it is so difficult to put back. I'm not saying it cannot be put back, but it is far more difficult. Whereas intellectual and academically, it is far easier to put back. But I'm coming from a psychological perspective and an education perspective. So therefore I'm seeing, that's what's happening. So that's the reason why we are discussing what is not being discussed. So let's have a look at, let's hear from my panelists. I've actually said my bit. Okay, so from the educator perspective, what do you think in terms of, can school cope with the rising mental health issue, that when you go back, you think that you are equipped enough and your school is equipped enough to give you the tools to enable you to deal with yourself and the student in front of you?
From my as a first grade teacher, we oftentimes get students who are already in some state of crisis, even prior to COVID. And with the little ones, most of the time it's unidentified. So a lot of our struggles as the lower elementary teachers is discovering what issues a student is facing when it comes to mental health. And it was an issue before COVID. And I'm definitely sure with the children being at home for an extended period of time with no structure from school, that there will be some ongoing issues when we return in September. Do I feel like my district is capable of handling all of the influx of problems? I think we will be shorthanded. We need more manpower. On my campus, we have 2 counselors, one for the lower grades and one for the higher grades. And they were overwhelmed before the pandemic, and it was with things that were not pertaining to student mental health, more like a paperwork issue with the school district. They process a lot of forms. They fill out a lot of paperwork that has to deal with IEPs and special education, a lot of things that are outside of the mental health professionals' realm, like things that they should not be doing. They're doing more administrative work as opposed to counseling the students. And I feel like the students will be at a big disadvantage because they are not going to be free to handle a lot of the issues that the students will come to school with when they return.
She brings up an excellent point about professional school counselors and the administrative roles for the support systems where they're doing, like, if it's like international students where they're doing their LPACs or they're doing special ed or 504s or those type of accommodations where you're processing a lot more paperwork. Like in Texas, it's supposed to be for a student 1 to 250 students to one counselor. And that's a lot. And that isn't overwhelming. And that's the academic piece, because in school counseling, they work in academic, career, and personal social development. But if you're just processing the academic, and we have mental health needs, which that should be our priority as well, because nobody cares less about education, as you said. I mean, nobody's going to care about your lesson if they are having trauma or abuse or family or homelessness or things of that nature. So she brings an excellent point about having the counselors to be more available to meet the needs and the mental health needs of their students and their parents. Because it's an ecological system. It's beyond just us individually. It's making an impact at all different levels.
Thank you. Margaret?
Okay, on this side of Kenya, I should honestly say that people are not ready to go back to school. Even the educators themselves, they are fearing. Most of them, maybe they have been affected by COVID and they have not been taken care of mentally. So if we are told to go back to school, I don't know what is going to happen, because in most of the government schools in Kenya, there are no counselors. There are no employed counselors. We don't have them completely. So unless you go back to school, like me, I decided to go back to school and train as a counselor, that is when the school will benefit. And now I do dual relationship. That is, I'm an educator at the same time I'm a counselor, which sometimes it's very overwhelming and I'm not able to handle the situation. Like now, if I say a school of 1,000 students and you are the only counselor and you have your lessons to teach, how are you going to handle the issues? And then from there, after working as a counselor, there's nobody to care for. Nobody cares for you like self-care. It will be on your side because there is no pay for you. Your pay is as an educator. But when it comes to be as a counselor, it is part of, like, you have decided to help the school. So you find that in the end, you end up having also issues as a counselor and nobody cares for you. So even the educators, they are not ready to go back to school because they don't have anything to help the students. Themselves, they are affected. Yeah. So that is the campaign as psychologists in Kenya we are trying to come up with, so that schools, government schools, to employ school counselors, so that the teachers remain, the educators remain doing their work as educators and the counselors do their work as, because even before COVID-19, you find that students have a lot of issues, home issues that result into poor performance in school. And nobody understands that as educators, we are carrying both doing counseling part and doing the teaching part. So you end up not being effective. And if you don't counsel those students, there's nothing they're going to understand in class. So we insist that we need that mental health to be emphasized in school for educators, for the parents, and even for the students.
Thank you. The other thing is, even though we have counselors in schools, as we, in the schools I'm at, yes, they would have one counselor. If we're very lucky, they might have two. Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Margaret? Margaret? Okay, that's one of the challenges of the internet. in countries like, Africa and Caribbean and Asia, because we cannot hear Margaret, but I'm sure she'll come back on. Yes, this is one of the challenges. Even though in the schools I'm at, they have one counselor, I might be lucky if they have two. It's still not enough, because as educators, we are still inputting in terms of counseling roles. Some educators are not even trained as counselors, but it's like learning on the job, how to help your student, because you realize your student is not engaging, and because they're not engaging, you have to do something to engage them.
You know what, that's exactly, the role of educating. Like when we first, in the first 20 years, it was just a lot different. In education, it was just basically a lot of times you're teaching, but when you're teaching, you still want to build those effective relationships, get to know your students, need to know where they're coming from. So, they look at their, backgrounds and all of that, so that you can meet the needs of your students. But as we continue to grow, I said it's about 2008, there was going to be a need for more counselors and more school social workers. And now look what happened, because we have all these different crises and things that are going on in the world and going in our communities. And right now, not only that we're dealing with racial unrest, we're also dealing with a pandemic. And so there is a lot of different challenges that not only that students are trying to progress, I believe us as professionals is also trying to process. What are we going to do? And there's a lot about, we've been talking about like self-care. How are we caring for ourselves? Because I know just being an educator and being a professional school counselor, even as an administrator, the loads that we have, and and the loads, and a lot of times people don't think that, I don't know if they think that we just drink coffee and just twiddle our thumbs, but the work of a school counselor is so deep and so massive, and then with everything that we're going through now in a pandemic, now they're implementing more of the the telecounseling, because we already started back. So now you're starting to see counselors that's doing more telecounseling, those type of things. So you're also seeing a shift of how we are educating and how we are implementing counseling, coaching, or whatever to meet the mental health needs of students. Do I think we were prepared? I think we was getting to it, but I think we're now having to force to change of how it looks in education and counseling, so that we can meet the needs of students. When students, when they come back, and there's just so much. You have some students that don't have a laptop, they can't pay for, they can't do the Zoom or wherever the different type of programs that they're using, Schoology. I've been hearing Seesaw on the elementary education to, take care of the needs of the academic needs of the students. And then with the counseling shift, telecounseling. Now you're starting to see that. So as the student success coordinator where I'm at the university, that's pretty much a school council position. All of my meetings are now Zoom and, or phone, versus when I start teaching my psychology classes Saturday, it's going to be a different experience, but there's still some stress because some people just don't, there's just so much. It's a lot to think about.
Thank you. Paquita, what do you think, as educators, what do you think educators need in terms of tools or strategies to deal with as much as possible with the increased rise in mental health when we go back? What do you think educators need?
I think educators need to be prepared on what type of signs to recognize when a child is in distress. We had a brief training last week. When I say brief, I mean 30 minutes on the trauma affected child, and how before the age of 20, most people have been affected by at least 5 different types of trauma that can affect them into adulthood. And so a lot of my colleagues who are not from a an area in life where they have been exposed to different types of children and different types of trauma, they're like, wow, people go through those things as kids. And I'm like, yeah, like there's abuse in households, there's homelessness, and homelessness goes more than just sleeping on the corner. That's living with your aunt one night and your uncle next week and your grandmother at the end of the month. A lot of our students have that type of traveling lifestyle. And so they don't have a space of their own. I've had students come to me in class and they're talking, and it's like, well, yeah, when I go to sleep and I have to sleep on the floor, and they're like, you don't have a bed? And I'm like, he just said he sleeps on the floor. But oh, I bet he has a bed. If he said he sleeps on the floor, he sleeps on the floor. So we need to make him comfortable as possible at school. And a lot of them don't have personal items. So when they come to school and they're twiddling their pencil and a teacher takes that pencil, that affects them negatively because they feel like you're taking one of the very few things that I have. And that is reactive. So a lot of teachers need to be made aware of how you can be proactive and not cause a student that's already going through a lot of trauma any more distress. And we need to learn how to pick our battles. A lot of times teachers want to be, I'm in charge. This is my room. I say what goes. Sometimes we need to just take a step back and say, okay, he's dealing with something or she's dealing with something today. I'm not even going to pick that monster. I'm not going to poke that dragon. I'm going to move on. And later on, you can approach that issue with the student. So a lot of teachers need more training on how to recognize a student in distress. And we also need the resources of someone coming in to assist that student, because I can't stop my instruction to help a student in distress, because that can go from 5 minutes to 45 minutes. And then that's my whole. So those are two things that I think are important: recognizing the trauma and when a student is in distress, and then having someone come in to assist that student and remove him from the current environment that he's in.
Thank you. Whoa. Margaret, because we all have education background, so I could always deal with the education. What do you think educators need to deal with the mental health issues in the school, in the classroom?
Educators need to be trained on how to understand children, because you find that even before COVID-19 came, you find that students in school are rebellious, and you realize that they're rebellious because they're acting out, they need help. But you find that educators don't understand from that side. They feel that it is a sign of indiscipline. So they end up handling discipline cases instead of looking at the psychological issues. And you find that even if you try to explain to your fellow educator that this child is behaving because of this and this, they don't really understand. They feel that you are intruding to their spaces. So educators need to be trained on how to understand the signs of students who are in distress. Because actually students have a lot of issues from home. You find others.
Your mic is mute. Unmute your mic. Unmute your mic.
Hello?
Yes, that's better, yeah.
Are you getting me?
No, your mic was mute, so you have to, your mic was mute, so we lost part of, So we lost where you said that educators need to be trained. Some of the challenge of online people.
Hello?
Yes, hi, I'm here. We're hearing you. Can you continue, please? Yeah, can you continue, please?
I'm saying that students have a lot of psychological issue from home. Some go without food. They take one meal a day. So they come, if they take lunch today, they wait up to the following day. So you find that students are in distress, and when they are in distress, they are not able to listen to the educators in school. And you normally find their distress comes out in form of indiscipline cases. So educators don't understand that. So they need to be equipped on how to understand the mental issues from the students. And then you find that even the educators themselves, they have their personal issues from home. So you find that they have not dealt with their personal issues from home, maybe due to domestic violence and everything, maybe financial constraint and other things. You find that they bring those issues and project them to the students. So actually educators themselves, they need to be helped. They need to be trained on self-care before they handle the students.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. And, you know, I see what's happening there. And when we finish, we will have to look at some tips in terms of how can we give, you know, what tips could we give educators, etc. Yes, Tiffany, what do you think educators need in terms of equipment? You know, how can we give them the tools or the strategy, or what do you think they need to make them understand?
One of the things that I believe that educators need is to have a understanding of every student and the worldview that they come from. And I'm coming from a psychological standpoint. All of us are individuals. All of us come from different backgrounds, cultures, socioeconomical status, experiences, backgrounds, everything. So when you look at education, particularly like in America, it's based on middle-class views. And so Caucasian American middle-class views on top of that. And so there is a perspective, like I was hearing one that was saying, oh, there's a student that sleeps on the bed. Oh, everybody has a bed. Everybody has a car. Everybody has a house. Everybody, why are they homeless? I think that we have to have some sort of compassion. When the student comes to school, it is our jobs to speak life to them and to make sure that they are getting the best educational needs. But with that, you have to build a rapport. You have to build relationships with students so that they can have that trust. So when we're in the classroom, and if you are very, very mindful, you are going to see those students who are struggling. You're going to find out information, even when you do a phone call. And sometimes I remember I would do phone calls and I would hear things. I was like, oh, now I understand why he's coming in this way. Or they might be hungry. I remember one time years ago when I was an elementary counselor, having a student and was just in distress. None of the teachers would ask why he was distressed. They just, brought him in, which I think is good because, again, if you have an instruction and you don't kind of know what's going on, you bring them to where? The counselor. Well, guess what? Parents were homeless, just became homeless. Mom had disabilities. There was 3 of them. They had nowhere to go. And so when you're dealing with those services and trying to connect them with services, that was hard. I had to go all the way outside of Alston just to find them a place so that they can be comfortable. So I think we have to just be mindful that everybody's not born with a silver spoon in their mouth, right? It don't make them no more or less than anybody. It doesn't matter. We just have to make sure that we are supporting their needs and listen what students say. When students are honest, they will tell you what they're feeling, and particularly if they trust you and they comfort you. And just to have some sort of empathy, like, oh, I just never knew anything like that. I think it's very important that we find out about different cultures and different experiences. I remember one time I was on an equity committee, and it should have been an equality committee, but it was an equity committee to make sure that everybody's needs are being met. But none of them, they were teaching students, particularly students of minority students, but never set foot in a minority or been in minority areas to know where they were coming from, to know their worldview and to know their perspectives. So they could not understand what they don't know. So we as educators also have to explain what they are feeling. I was dealing with a situation last week, and I don't think that they just didn't understand. It's just that they didn't have the same perspective of me as a minority than what this child was, because they never had those experiences before. So me personally, I think that as educators, we have to be mindful. We need to have to look at their worldviews. We have to look at their cultures. We need to take in and embrace everything about that person. so that we can give them adequate needs to make everybody be successful, not just one group, not just one race, not just one socioeconomical status, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And for me, I feel that COVID, in terms of the online teaching, have actually have done a lot for educators, especially in the online field, because it made educators, it reinforced what some students did not have. Because I remember an educator was saying to me, an English educator, she was saying to me that when the child was coming to her in school and say, oh, well, me, sorry, I didn't do my homework because, I couldn't get the computer, la, la, la. She did not understand and she did not believe that child because she felt that, hold on, you could do your homework. But as she said, when the child was doing the online, the child wasn't able to come on. The child messaged her and said, well, she couldn't come on because their four other siblings needed to use a computer. And they all was coming on at the different times, because of the school. And sometimes the time clashes. So that child did not have access. And she said to me, I really now understood what this child was talking about. I said, it's interesting because COVID have actually shone the light on the have and the have not. And it actually demonstrates the inequality so much more so now than we ever thought possible. Because it really showed up what reality is for some of our students. Mm-hmm. So could you imagine when we actually knowing that and when we go back into the classroom, how can we cope? Because, one of the things I constantly say on the show, the thing I do with my student, I believe that before I actually touch a lesson in my class, I need to take them in a place of calmness. Mm-hmm. Because some of them are coming into the classroom, not only with the baggage, they're frustrated. There's a lot of frustration and anger. And sometimes it's no fault of their own, they just don't know how to deal with it. So before I actually start a lesson, I do meditation with my students. Whether or not it's right or wrong, I don't know. I'm just doing what I feel works for me and my students. And, they will be coming into my class to classical music because classical music is very, very calming. And as we know, it's really, the impact it has on the brain is very powerful. So they need to come into my classroom to music and also a positive quote on the board, because we don't know what have gone on out there. We don't know when they come into the classroom and they're angry at us. They're not necessarily angry at us, they're angry with the situation. Because as we know as educators, in some cases, we are the only person or the first person that would actually tell a child something positive. And could you imagine you getting into the classroom where you've just had issues at home and you were expecting a positive welcome, and then you were hit with a negative? That child, you cannot expect that child to be connecting with you for the rest of the day. Forget that. And that is what I feel that some educators are forgetting. As Margaret, you've said that the time when students come into the classroom, their anger and frustration or their behavior, doesn't reflect them as a child. It depends on what they've actually just been experiencing. And you cannot just label it as this child has, a bad behavior, whatever. It is more than just that. So that's something educators need to look at. And as I say, they have to come into music, they have a positive quote, and is, I am great. And one student said to me, during the time of the COVID, Miss, what do you mean I am great? I said, what does it say? It said, you were great, and I want you to practice this for the rest of the day. And initially with students, they find it, it's funny. What do you mean that I'm great? I said, I need you to find something great in you and explain to the rest of the class. It could be a situation where you're great at listening to music, you're great at writing, it doesn't matter. Because in every child, there is something positive, which as educators, especially now in the mental health issue situation, we need to start pulling it out. Mm-hmm. We really need to start pulling it out, because as we know, in terms of when people are feeling depressed, you know, nothing worse than adding onto it. And someone that is depressed, you know, you cannot have negative and positive together because they don't connect. So when you have the negative and positive, the positive outshine the negative. So that's what we need to ensure in terms of educators. So for me, one of the tools I'm going to say to educators, and one of the tools I'm going to insist on they actually thinking about is meditation and music and powerful words, you know, like I am great, I am powerful, I am worthy, because we know young people don't even feel that they are good enough because the system is saying to them that you got to be or you get to see, so you're not good enough. So as educators, we need to start instilling those things. So that's one of the tools I'm going to be, you know, thinking about. So I want you all to say, well, what tools do you feel that we are going to be able to give educators and parents out there that they're going to try to pull out the best in the children during this time because they have baggages.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Margaret.
Okay. On my side, I think I will emphasize on relaxation techniques like breathing in and out. As I enter the classroom, let's say, I need to tell my student to cheer them up by telling them, can you breathe in? There is this breathing in of from 4, 7, 8. I don't know whether you know for the counselors. Yeah, you breathe in using your nose 4 times, you hold 7 times, and then you breathe out through your mouth 8 times. When you do that, it relaxes before you start the lesson. That will be one tool to be used.
I use, and with me, I'm an artist, so I'm actually a certified therapeutic art coach. So a lot of things that I do has to do with music. So I might put in a lot of, I'm a neo-soul artist, so a lot of times I'll put in some jazz or some of the instrumentals from my music or whatever, but I have that playing, and you would be surprised how that just calms the spirit. Music is medicine to the soul too, and calm the spirit. I'm also right now I'm working on a mindfulness life coach certification as well, because I'm starting to see that is also one of the innovations that we're seeing in counseling now, mindfulness and meditation, like you're saying. I'm actually it's actually this week. This week I'm going to be starting with my college students in doing some medication seminars. I don't know the time frame that I'm going to do. Either I'm going to do like a mid-week check where we start, you know, just to get centered, or maybe do it on a Friday or a Monday. I don't know. I haven't decided. I believe it's going to be Wednesday, more than likely. But just to get everybody centered, having a place of comfort, kind of like a group session to talk. How's your day going? How's everything, you know, thing going? But also having that music and that time to just, you know, to relax. And there's some apps that I use, like I like Calm, where I listen to the rain and the water and things like that. And I know Margaret was talking about like the breathing. That's what we do in yoga. We do like those breathing exercises. And, you know, back in the day, I was like, oh, I don't want to breathe. But breathing it calms. And physiologically, it calms the spirit and brings that cortisol down. So, yeah. So those are some things that I continue to do. The meditation, the mind, music.
Okay. One thing that I would like to incorporate into my room is our greetings. I've been seeing like a lot of, like usually in the mornings, I would, you know, give a high five, shake your hand, give you a hug. Can't do any of that anymore. So I've been seeing some different types of ways that young children can greet you, but still be social distance. So like a foot bump or elbow bump or spirit fingers as you come up in the morning. So that's my way of greeting in the morning when they come. I've used music in my class. We used to have physical education and recess right before math. and that was a struggle getting them to calm down before they have the math. So I would play, it was like an ocean themed music, like you hear the waves crashing, and like we would listen to that like 3 minutes before the math lesson, and it would have like a completely calming effect on the students. So I plan to incorporate more calming music at different points through the day. Like when I notice like the kids are getting high key and they are getting restless and they need to come down, play more music, get them recentered and refocused on the lessons. So those are just 2 things I plan to incorporate this year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. In terms of, can school cope? What do we think schools could do? What suggestions do we have in terms of, what can school do in order to enable them to cope? Because we also know that in terms of counseling, employing more counselors, we know a lot of schools cannot really afford that. So what suggestions can we offer?
I've noticed since the pandemic, a lot of people are coming to realize how much they depend on the schools to solve their problems. With the student hunger issue, a lot of people didn't realize, okay, how's my child going to eat now? They're not going to school. I don't have childcare. My child's not going to school. Or we don't have lights, or we like whatever they were lacking, they were depending on the school to solve that problem. And I think the pandemic has revealed that the weight of a lot of families is on the school system, and educators are faced with solving a lot of issues that parents come across. I think the school system needs to have more of a parental guidance instead of, they like to do parental involvement, where we have activities and programs where parents come and do the learning experience. I feel we need to have more of a parental instruction type workshop going through the school system, where parents can come in and learn how to facilitate their own problems, or use us as a resource to get them to the next level if they need assistance for a boost. I feel like we encourage them to come to school and participate in the fun things, but we aren't teaching the parents anything either. So we're not just educating the child, we need to educate the entire family. I think that's where the school system can kind of step it up a little bit.
I so agree with that, though, because you're right, because we tend to get the parents involved with, oh yes, we're having a fun day, or we're having a bars or whatever, come along. But the parents have so many issues themselves. So it is so important that we do try to equip them. That's very true. That's so very true. Yeah, thank you. Margaret?
Okay, on this side of Kenya, maybe the African countries, if you call the parents to come, they don't come. Even if it's the student and parents meeting, they rarely come. They'll tell you they're very busy looking for income to buy food and everything because of the status in the country. So what I may think of, maybe we equip the teachers, the educators more in terms of having programs and workshops about mental health, so that they're given some skills in order to be able to handle the students themselves instead of the parents. Because when we call the parents to come for even education meetings, they rarely turn. They'll tell you, are we coming to eat the mental issues, or we are supposed to look for money to buy food for the children? So on this side, the perspective is that we keep the teachers to be equipped, the educator to be equipped more with the knowledge and information about the mental health, so that they may take it back to the student.
Yes, interesting though, as Tiffany, when you were saying in terms of looking at the various culture, although we have the experience globally is very much the same, in terms of the resources to deal with it is so very, very, very different. Yeah.
Right. And in Texas, we do have a lot of resources for the students. So like I live in Killeen, but worked in Killeen, Austin, Round Rock. They have like a lot of resources, like if they have parental involvement workshops. I don't know. Yeah, they do have those types of things. when I was an elementary counselor in the Austin area, they would have, like, if students need food, we had like a Friday backpack program. So we would provide them foods, or if some students become homeless or short on food or anything, we had a partnership with the church that would provide food for students and their families. That was all over the district. Mental health wise, when I was working in Austin ISD, they were very equipped again, but they had mental health workers, school counselor workers that worked in with the school counselor. So if we had students that had, like, you know, just different needs, mental health or social service needs, their needs would be taken care of. But just to think about it, there's so many people that need needs. So it's just like a, you know, it can be difficult and it could be overwhelming. One thing about Austin, they have a big homeless problem. I mean, really big homeless population. So you would find that there were so many people that was needing resources that the schools were not able to manage. And that's one thing they were saying, using the school to help solve their particular problems. I'm thinking now, I knew students, we had to call CPS on because parents didn't have childcare, but they had to work, you know. And now think about it, if it's a pandemic and they're having to teach their child, you know what I mean? There's so many different things. Mental health wise, one of the things that I saw that was really big in Round Rock ISD, they have a mental health center. So when students were having problems, or school counselors weren't being able, and the students were needing to be therapeutic, they needed therapy, they partnered with the Bluebonnet Trails, where they had a licensed school counselor, not licensed school counselor, licensed professional counselor, LCDC, I think a licensed master social worker. And what the school counselor would do, we could write those students that need very, some intensive, like they needed some therapy and things, we could write the referrals and send it to them, and they could have therapy at the school where the parents didn't have to take them to their therapy sessions. The therapist would come to the school, and they spent over $1 million for this. So their therapy, then they didn't have to go through insurance. The school district paid for their insurance. So they was getting therapy for free. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen from an education, but you're talking about one location. Texas is a big state. That's not everybody. I said one location. One location. So now think about other different districts or states that don't have that funding, or those rural areas that do not have those funds. Round Rock is kind of more of a middle class, more affluent area. You know, yeah, they have their low socioeconomic populations, but they were able to, you know, to provide. But it's like one of those things, you know. So I think from an ecological standpoint of education, there's just a lot of stuff that everybody has to think about with mental health. You know what I mean? And do we have the resources to take care? Because again, when we're dealing with the child, it doesn't fall too far from what? Their parents. You know what I mean? I don't want to say the fruit, but you know what I mean? The parents. And a lot of them need help. So what do we do? There's just so much funding. Fundings are getting cut. They're not trying to fund mental health. They talk about mental health, but where's the funding?
So what can we do? What can we do?
What can we do? We have to, what can we do? Are you talking about it from like a counseling point, or just from a?
I'm talking from a global point. I'm talking from an educator point, you know, because we know that when these doors are open, there would be nobody there to deal with it except us. So what can we do, and what suggestion can we give to the parents, you know, with the children still at home? And it's just big. My head is hurting. It's big.
I'm talking, I keep talking, but at the college level, you just have to be on your game, and you have to be on your point. And whatever their needs, what are the resources that you have available, and be sure that you're connecting them with those resources. You know what I mean? Some of the students I see at the college, they don't feel like, a lot of them don't want to, some don't want to go to therapy for, you know, certain reason. You can't force them, but I think the goal is to just make sure that you're available. I mean, we're in counseling positions, so we're there to, we're doing our jobs and everything, but like if they need more, just providing them with those resources so that they can get the extra help and needs that they need to be met, you know, for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. Margaret and Paquita, what do you think we can do? What can you do when you go back? What would you be able to do? You know, because we know that the question I did ask, can schools cope with the increase in mental health issue? And I know from my experience, I say no. So what can we do? You know, how can we help ourselves? You know, what can we do in relationship to the parents? What suggestion can we give parents in terms of trying to cope with this child that, you know, could be out of control, but they haven't identified some of the signs? You know, what could we suggest?
Okay, on my side, I'm thinking of from the school perspective, because some things I can't have control over the parents or back at home. So I'm thinking on my side in terms of an educator, as I go back to school, I'm going to have a forum for peer counselors. That is, I take the students themselves, I train them on the skills, on how to realize issues from other students, so that in case a student has an issue and is not able to come to me or to go to the educator, they're able to handle amongst themselves. So I think through having a training with the peer counselors in the school, I'll be able to equip them with the skills which they'll be able to handle with their fellow students.
That's you know, that's a good point. Yeah, thank you. Paprika?
I deal with the younger ones, the little ones. I would say my first step is to build the relationship with the student and the parent. Once the student is comfortable or knows that I care and that I'm coming from a place of love to assist, once the child feels comfortable with me, they'll let me know what they need. Children will let you know. Once they're comfortable with you, they will let you know everything they need. So it's about building that relationship with first the student and then the parent. Because once the parent realizes, oh, this lady loves my child, she's going to do everything she can to help my baby. Let me work with her. So, because a lot of parents do come with negative school experiences themselves, so they don't want anything to do with the school when it comes to their own child. So I think that's to go back and rebuild those relationships. Because I know when I was a child, my parents knew my teachers. Like, oh yeah, I know her. Let's go. I will go to her house. We'll knock on her door. What did you do today? And so I think that's the problem. A lot of parents and educators are disconnected. There's that connection's not there anymore. So once we rebuild that connection and that relationship, we can see, okay, this child needs this. What can I do to assist this child? And it goes beyond just, I'm just a teacher. We got to stop saying I'm just a teacher. You are an adult in that child's life. Whatever you do affects that child, whether it's from 7 to 3 or all day.
That is such a good point, because, you know, as much as you have some educators saying, I'm just a teacher, society doesn't say you're just a teacher. So as much as you think, well, I'm only the teacher, and you get this from educators who are either tired in the job. So they're at the stage where it's like, oh, I'm just a teacher, you know, I can't be bothered, because they're tired. You know, as much I understand that, I feel that it's now time for me to counsel you out of the profession. Because when you are saying that you're just a teacher, it's time for me to coach you out of the profession, for me to empower you, and you know that you could do something else. Too often educators are stuck in there and they give the negative outcome because they feel that A, they're not good enough, B, they don't know where else to go because they have not empowered themselves enough to see that I could do something else.
Right.
So when we have, and I think we all should be much aware of that, when we have educators saying, oh, well, I'm just a teacher. Oh, well, I'm only here 9 to 3. Yes, it's time for you to come out because you need, it's more than just that. I also understand that we need to draw the line, but when we are having those negative feedback, it's a problem. And I've had that where I've had educators say that, and I've said to one of the educators, you know, much older, you'll get that a lot from older educators. And I say, you know what, anytime I'm thinking like that, it's time for me to leave because I do not want to think like that.
I agree. And just being in public education, even as a professor, not where I am, but like at the university, you're here with just a lot of negativity. Why are you here? Why are you there? I mean, and then you have to stay innovative. You, like I keep saying, you cannot be on 8-track tapes and we're streaming now. You have to get with the times so that you can connect with the kids that you are dealing with. You can't be talking about Little House on the Prairie and we right here, you know what I mean? You have to, what is their world? What is their worldview? This is kind of like developmental psychology. You know, our stage is what you did at 20 is different than what they're doing at 20 or 30. We're in a whole different life. So I do agree with that, because teachers is one of the most important professions to me in the world, and you can mess up somebody just as much as you can speak life and inspire somebody. So you're not in it, and it's nothing about what you just have to pray for those who are just that has that negative energy. You know, you just have to pray because you can't change people. And but one thing that you can do is every time, one thing I do, I try to create a culture of everybody being comfortable and inclusive in my environment. And once you have that environment of safety, like you said, what Paquita said, those students are gonna what? They gonna come to you. Because they know that you are there to help and to support them in their needs, not to make them fall, fall down. And just think if you're being negative and we got all this going on, nobody needs that.
It is very true. It is very true. Okay, can I have 1 point from everybody, 1 or 2 points from everybody, in terms of what could we encourage parents to look out for in the children, especially now, in terms of their mental state and their well-being? What could we say that, we suggest to parents, listen out for? What I would say to parents is you need to listen to what they're not saying to you. You didn't know your child before, I understand that. You really start knowing your child come COVID, because that's the time you were forced to really know your child. Some parents didn't know the children at all, but COVID have actually forced them to stay there with those children. So they now know the children. So when we used to say about little Peter and little Johnny, behavior issue, not listening, they say, what are you talking about? You don't know my child. Now they're coming to us and say, yeah, you were right. Okay, so one thing I'm going to say to parents is you need to listen to what your child is not saying, because what they're not saying is a lot. When you actually look at how they're interacting with you or how they're not interacting, and in terms of the behavior, you need to check on that, because those are telltale signs. Yeah, others. Tiffany, you want to say, what are you going to suggest to parents?
For parents, and again, I'm with older students. One of the things, and because they're at the university level or at the college level, one of the things I want to have them is that they need to check in on their students while they're home, away from home, or on campus. Just having that conversation with them. How are you doing? How are you adjusting, to life in college right now? You know what I mean? It's a difference. What can I do to, and also talk to them about what they do as a parents to help them and assist them. The parent role don't leave once they're, graduating from high school and just go on to college and things like that. But one of the things, I just think that they need to still have that honest, good communication, not throwing them out in the woods, but letting them know that they have that support system. And if they are stressed or they're having some type of whatever concern or issue, to just not only be there for them, but if they need the resources, if they need a counselor or a social worker, to don't be shame about that. It's very important to self-advocate for yourself. So if that's something that I would talk to parents about, is making sure that they're teaching their teaching their daughter or son to self-advocate for themselves, to get their needs met so that they're able to continue to be successful and to move forward in all the areas that they do. If there's a stumbling block, guess what? There's always a loophole. There's always something that we can do to help them. So that's what I want, and that's what I'm here for.
Thank you. Paprika?
I would like for parents to build with parents. Educators are not the enemy. So many times we've been painted as the enemy. We're here to reprogram your child. We are here to help. That's our job. That's what we went to school for, to make a difference in a child's life. So if your child needs something, or if you need something, we are not the enemy. It is not our intent to harm you. We're here to help. So reach out and communicate with us the different changes that are going on in your adult life that could be affecting your child. If a family member has a new diagnosis that's detrimental to their health, that affects the child. I had a student last year that he was acting out and the mom couldn't figure out why. And I was like, well, is there something different going on? He couldn't visit the elderly grandfather because he was diagnosed with dementia. And so was missing that relationship. And it didn't click with her. I was like, well, he can't see him anymore, right? She was like, no. I said, well, he's missing that. And that's why he's out. So they just need to recognize that whatever they're going through as an adult, it is having an effect on their child. So reaching out to us at the school, we're not the enemy. We're not here to destroy you and your family. We want to make sure your life is supportive to a positive effect on the child.
Thank you. Margaret?
Okay, what I can say to the parents is that they should understand their children, create that good relationship with their children, like the teenagers. That is the critical stage for the teenagers. Then it is the stage that parents say they're rebellious. It is not that they're rebellious, but the emotional part is high. So they need to come to their level, speak their language of the teenagers, be their best friends. So that in case of anything, the teenagers are able to share with their parents. And also in a place where they are not able to, they are free to reach out to the educators. So that we work as a team, parents, the educators, and the students.
Very true. It is so important that we maintain a parent-student and teacher relationship. That is crucial. What I want us to now give the educator in terms of to prevent burnout, to reduce mental health issue, to reduce some of the challenges that educators are going through. What 2 tips would you give to educators and would you take for yourself? Because we're going back into the schools either online or in the physical classroom. What 2 things would we take for ourselves to enable us to be strong enough to deal with the students when they come with us with this backpack full of issues? Well, one of the things I'm going to take for myself is my good old meditation. My meditation. There's also something called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. And it is powerful beyond measure. If you guys don't know about it, educators out there, go onto YouTube, You know, it is, you know, being a practitioner, it is fantastic because I use it with my clients and I use it with my students, I use it for myself. It is so very useful. It helps you to unpack some of your baggages. So 2 things I would say to educator: meditation, you know, find a quiet place. It's quite easy to do, or even go for a walk. That is also part of self-care. Going for a walk at lunchtime, where even though you're at home, just go for a walk. It could be a 5 minutes walk. When you come back, you become a different person. Or meditation and EFT. I said 2, but I've got 3. Okay. Tiffany, what 2 or 3 tips you would give educators in terms of self-care?
I have a couple. Prayer.
Yes.
You know, the Bible says meditate on his word. Prayer. I wake up in prayer without ceasing. And with my prayer, music, calming music. And you can do that with mindfulness, and you can do that with meditation. Meditate on his word. So prayer, music. Also, another thing that I like is also that's therapeutic is art. Just taking quiet time and space just to draw. I'm not a drawer, I can't draw and make a mean stick figure though. But just to draw that like colors and just, you know, in yoga, I'm getting more into yoga now. I haven't been a couple of weeks or 2 because it's just been a busy week. But yoga is also relaxing with the sound therapy and things like that. But mostly with me, prayer, mindfulness, and music.
Thank you. Yes. Paquita?
One thing that I've helped me cope during the pandemic, I have found some things that are relaxing that I could go and do alone. So while I'm working on this task, I'm decompressing, like all my thoughts, everything that's stressing me out or is worrisome, I can relax and let go and work on something by myself. Like just detaching from all of it. And it could be for 30 minutes, an hour, just something to keep my mind focused on something that I enjoy instead of staying wrapped up in what's causing the stress.
Okay, thank you. Margaret?
On my side, I prefer the breathing in and out technique. And also Kenya being a social community, I like calling out and talking to friends. Yeah. Like now we are in so many groups of counselors and psychologists in Kenya. Sometimes when I feel overwhelmed, I call one of us and we talk. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We not only identify some of the challenges, we've also given parents some tips that could actually use to identify, you know, or spot some of the things that the children are not saying. And we've also put out some of the tips for educators in terms of self-care. It is so very, very, very important that parents start to observe the behavior of the children and they actually act on it before it is too late. As we keep on saying, mental health issue is going to be a big thing. And it is now a big thing. And the mental health system cannot cope with all of those things. So the earlier you're able to identify it and find various self-help tools to deal with it, the better it is. And those are the things we need to start being aware of. I understand that parents, you're concerned about the academic ability of your child. You're concerned that they've missed a lot. You're concerned that, you know, their intellectual development would be delayed. Let me assure you as an educator, and I'm sure my colleagues would support that, it is easier for you to catch up. It is easier for you to help, for us to help your child to catch up academically and intellectually. But in terms of mental health areas, it is more challenging to deal with a broken mind. Intellectually, it's easy. We could send you, we could give you extra lessons. We could, we could do intervention. We could do all of those things. But believe me, when the mind is broken, it takes so much more to put it back together. And there's sometimes it still cannot be got, it still cannot be back together. So please, parents, I would suggest that you start looking at the mental health issue of your children and your child and yourself than the intellectual and the academic. Don't worry, he'll be suited. Right, I cannot stress enough. And when I say that, someone pulled me up last week and say, how could you be an educator and you say you don't care a damn about academic? I'm going to repeat myself. I do not care a damn about the academic or intellectual. I care more about the mental health issue because I cannot put a broken child together fully. Academically, I could help that child to get up to the level. Intellectually, I could help that child. But when it's the mental health, it's much more difficult. So yes, you guys could hammer me on that. That's your business. I'm coming from a psychological perspective and an academic perspective. So I'm seeing both of it. And my mother have always told me that, and I've actually taken this. My mother have always said, I remember when I did my first degree and I started crying, I said, I want to kill myself because I failed, etc. She said to me, I'd rather have a dunce child than have a mad child, because she was working in the mental health system. And the fact that she was assessing and she was up there, she knew. And she kept on saying she was seeing children and young people who was coming into the mental health system because of academic inability, because they've been told that they were not good enough academically. So what happened? The mental health went into disarray. And some of these young people, their mental health have never been repaired. That's why my mother have always said to me, and I've always said to my children, I rather have a dunce child than a mad child, because I know that dunce child can be repaired. That dunce child doesn't have to remain dunce. But that mad child, it becomes difficult to really repair a mental health issue with a child. I am not preaching, I'm just saying it as it is. Yeah. Right, is there any one thing you guys from my panel you want to put out there before I just wrap up?
No.
You said it all. Mental health is real. No, mental health, it needs to be properly funded in the schools, and it needs to be properly funded like they fund football in Texas so much with the coaches and all that. They need to be funding a lot more counselors, a lot more social workers to take care of the need, not just 1 or 2 or 3. I shouldn't even say 3, but 2.
Exactly.
They need to, to do a lot more. And then those are in the profession, not only that we need to take care of our self-care, but we have to just be on point and just be 100 with our students and let them know that we are there for them.
Yep, so important. Yep. Perquita, have you got anything else to say?
No, just keeping an eye out on your children. Recognize when they are going through something. It may not be through verbal communication. You may have to watch what they're doing, withdrawing from things that they love or attaching themselves to things that are more negative. Just watch your children and make sure they are in a healthy mental space. And if they're not, get them some help.
Thank you. Thank you. Margaret?
Okay, since I deal mostly with the teenagers and the early adult children, adults, I emphasize that parents should look at what is happening, come to their level, be their best friends in order to be able to handle their mental status.
Right. Thank you very much, Facebook world out there. Thank you very much to my panel. It was fantastic. I do hope that you guys have actually got something from our panel discussion, because I certainly have got something from my colleague. I'll be back next Sunday with another of this show with a few more specialists from around the world. right? And they will be coming from around the world so that we could actually see, you know, the way things are dealt with in other countries, etc., because those are the learning tools. Thank you. Share, comment, and like, right? And I've got another show this evening, which is educators on the, what is it called? I forget. Educators teaching online during COVID. I completely forgot what I'm talking about. So my educator was supposed to be here this evening on the online platform. She have not communicated back with me, so I'm not too sure what's happening there, but I should be back. Anyway, thank you everybody, and thank you very, very much to my panel for taking the time off to come and share with us your experiences and what we know to be true, that the school are unable to cope with the rise in mental health, and how can we deal with it as individual practitioners, either as educators, as counselors, as therapists, because as we know, the resource out there is not a lot, so we just have to use what we've got. And thanks very much, faithful people. Night, morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much. Stay blessed, and I'll see you guys either later on this evening or tomorrow. Take care.